Hello traders, this is going to be my second video on Uniswap. I think that this video is going to be pretty helpful for anyone who is looking for coins to decide to trade on Uniswap, and also some patterns that I've noticed that I think are going to be pretty helpful. Without further ado, let's dive in. All right, traders, we're going to be looking at the correlation between liquidity on Uniswap and the price of said token on Uniswap. So basically looking at what does an increase in liquidity in these liquidity pools lead to price-wise? How does it affect the supply and demand of the underlying pair? So first example that I want to show you is one of the newly listed FTX coins. This coin was listed on February 13th. That's important to remember when we start looking at it, February 13th. And basically, one thing to think about with liquidity pools in Uniswap, I've noticed that when there's a pretty substantial jump in liquidity for a token, that typically leads to an increase in the token. And a theoretical example of why that might occur is this. Imagine that there is a token that trades for 1 penny, but the total liquidity is $5,000. It's going to be really, really hard to attract investors. It's going to be really, really hard for people to even see this coin. So there isn't really too much use case, or there isn't really too much reason for that coin to like skyrocket in value on good liquidity. Now imagine that it's still trading at 1 penny, but now there's $800,000 worth of liquidity. So a lot of people are beginning to allow this coin to be swapped, added, and removed. Now, when this happens, a lot more money's pouring in to actively trading this against other pairs. That's what can begin to attract more attention, attract more potential investors, attract more money, and basically liquidity breeds more liquidity. So if there's a coin that just nothing's happened for a year and the total liquidity in that pool has just stayed at like $10,000, there probably isn't much reason for that coin to just skyrocket in value randomly against any other coin that's in the same situation. But if lots of money is being added to their liquidity pools, that can lead to an increase in the price because it's easier for people to buy the asset. Making things easier for people to buy, not surprisingly, is what can increase the price of a coin. That's why newly listed coins, this is a kind of hard statement for me to make, but newly listed coins, I would say, are typically more bullish than bearish, meaning it's more likely that if you were to either buy or sell a coin at a new listing, typically they rise in price more than they fall in price after listing. But that's more of a blanket statement, so be careful with that. All right, so looking at Rook here, here's what I want to talk about. February 6, we're at about 8 mil. February 7, we're about 8.1. Really not much happening. But then February 9th, we go up to $13 million in this liquidity pool. Why does that matter? Well, let's go take a look at the price of this. Now, the first thing you might notice is, why am I using 1 divided by wrapped ether divided by Rook? I'm doing this because I'm getting the price of Rook to Ether. So when this price increases, that means that Rook is increasing over Ethereum. That's why I'm using 1 divided by it, okay? So February 9th was around here, where it didn't really look like anything crazy was happening, and some people be like, hey, why would you want to buy anything here? Well, had you seen this signal here, had you seen that there was a pretty good increase in money in going into Rook, and remember, this coin was not listed until February 13th on FTX. Once we begin to see that there's a fair amount of money being poured in, like February 11th, we're at 14.3 mil in this liquidity pool. We go from about 8 mil on February 7th to February 11th, 12th, we're really increasing. But the price on February 11th, you know, it rises, but it still hasn't risen to the max here. So if you had bought in around here when you notice that there's millions of dollars being added to these pools, I mean, that's where you get those like 75% returns. Now, another example is, well, does this go both ways? Yeah. When the liquidity pool diminishes, you can see like 17 mil to 15 mil, I've noticed that does correlate typically to a decrease in price. However, there are, of course, going to be other factors to this. It's not like there's a one-to-one correlation. One of the big factors, unfortunately, is the price of Bitcoin. You know, not surprisingly, when Bitcoin rises, all coins rise, and when Bitcoin falls, all coins fall. More often than not, that statement does hold true. Unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it can make it kind of hard to hedge beta or to try to get a good portfolio that's not 100% correlated to BTC and whatever BTC does that morning, afternoon, or night. But you can see here that as there was more money being poured into Rook, the price increased. And if you had noticed this, that's where we get, like I showed before, those 75% returns. Okay, so another coin that I want to look at, let's look at Ren. So I'm going to look at the Ren ETH pair. Oh, wow. This one is going to be a fun one. Okay, so let me look this one up on Uniswap. Ren Ethereum, let's do, yeah. And I don't have to do like 1 divided by because it has the right numerator and denominator. This price increase seems like a fat finger, a 300% price increase, and that probably corresponded exactly to what happened here. But what we can see happen is September 5th, September 4th, we see over $10 million being added to this pool. Just a ton of money flowing in. And if we look at where the price was around there, that's when the price did begin to increase. And I don't think you would have been able to catch this massive increase very quickly. It would have been very difficult. But if somehow you had noticed this, if somehow you had noticed that, hey, there's a lot of money coming to this pool, just a bunch of money coming to this pool, maybe that'll correspond to a rapid price increase, then maybe you could have gotten this. But that's a kind of situation that I don't think would have been as easy as it really looks. And then we can see here that in early January that this pool really did increase in liquidity, meaning it's easier for people to trade it. And not surprisingly, the price did just rise. I would say that correlation-wise, definitely an increase in liquidity leads, I'd say, more to an increase in the demand for the asset or in the price of the asset, more so than a decrease in liquidity leads to a decrease in the price. That's just something that I've noticed by looking at a few dozen of these coins. But of course, you should be finding your own patterns, and you should not be just taking every statement that I make and just putting tens of thousands of dollars on it. I'm not a financial advisor. Please do your own research. All I'm doing is showing some theory and in practice of what I think holds to be true and how I would like to use my money, to make more money through risk. And this is one of the ways, by looking at, well, an increase in liquidity to make me want to invest in this token, or to use Uniswap to try to swap into this token, trade Ethereum and get REN. And we can see the liquidity really topped out about January 19th, January 20. We have just a bunch of money coming in. And as liquidity topped out, yeah, that's where the price began to top out as well. But I have noticed that, yeah, just rapid increases in liquidity like this just are pretty good signals that the price typically rises. This was like late December, early January, so around here. And around here may have not been, this is 2020 hindsight, pun not intended, but around here would have been, a pretty nice time to have invested in REN. And REN got listed. Let's go see when it got listed, because that's, of course, was going to increase the price. It got listed about, at the last day of January. So on the last day of January, it got listed, and that's probably when it did quite well in price. Yeah, it got listed around here on FTX, and that's why it increased right there. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go look at the another coin here. What shall we look at? Another coin that they aren't mentioning here, but has been listed, is FTM. Because they just listed FTM perp, FTX did. But yeah, let's go look at FTM. FTM Ethereum. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Okay, so let's go pull it up on Uniswap, and yeah, okay. Oh, geez, yeah, this is going to be really, really fun to analyze. Wow, that's quite the price increase. If you guys don't know what percent that is, that's like a what? 1,700% increase. Well, let's go look at what was going on before all this shenanigans happened. Well, this is one of those examples that what I was talking about before. This thing had like a liquidity pool of FTM to Ethereum of like 15, 20 bucks. So there probably wasn't really much reason for this thing to just, like skyrocket in value. But then when it does skyrocket in value, which was the date of 18th September. Yeah, you can see that's when we get a substantial increase in the liquidity pool. And when would be a good time to potentially invest in this asset? And here, the words I'm saying here, I'm not saying trade, I'm saying invest, because this kind of strategy that I'm showing you guys is not something you're going to do for 2 days, or it's not something you're going to do for like 3 hours. Because these pairs are sometimes not as liquid, I think a more dominant strategy is time. Like, for example, if you see a really good pattern that you think that there's a bunch of liquidity being added to a token, that this token's getting more attention, getting more popular, and probably going to be attracting more buyers and attracting more demand, then really substantial profits come in days or weeks. They don't always come in like 2 hours. So patience is very important, of course, and definitely when using Uniswap. Yeah, and here's the example right here. So we can see, let's go and analyze what was the first day that this coin really took off. It was January 23rd. January 23rd was already after, when we go from about 250K here to just, we double in the liquidity pool before the price actually increases. You can see that the liquidity added here just is really getting like larger and larger and larger. And that would have been a sign to potentially try to swap into FTM, to try to get into FTM. Let's say you missed that and you see this large increase right here and you're like, whoa, is this going to increase? Is this going to continue to increase? You know, how do I play this? Well, let's say that the date is currently, you only know data up to February 24th. It's been increasing a lot and you're like, is this legit or is this not legit? Well, February 24th at this point was a liquidity high. I mean, you didn't know that liquidity was about to drop off like the planet right here, like 95% or 95%. But what you do see is the liquidity is increasing. It's now at 674K. So at this point, this probably would not be a terrible idea to swap into, at least I would. But the amount of money I would use for these kinds of more speculative trades would probably just be maybe a few $1,000s or less, like nothing really that crazy. But let's say I put $1,000 in on January 24th. Let's say I get in at the close right there, which is, you know, right there. And then I hold, let's say, until like, I don't know, another liquidity drop around mid-Feb. Well, I hope I would. I hope I would have stayed in. But if I did hold to like here, you know, that would have been 150%. But I'd say one reason potentially why this happened was maybe because of FTX listing. I mean, there could be other reasons why this shenanigans happened. Maybe FTX, maybe it's another reason that I don't know about. Even though new listings do more often than not increase price more than decrease price of the token listed. That's just something that I've noticed. But let's go look at some liquidity drops and how that affected price. So, we get a pretty massive liquidity drop, Feb 9 to Feb 10. Pretty large. So Feb 9, Feb 10. Well, what's going on Feb 9 to Feb 10? Feb 9, Feb 10, really nothing's happening. This pool kind of diminishes and the price just kind of stalls. And this makes sense that, of course, there are other liquidity pools and there are other factors of what's happening here. But in a vacuum, if there's just a drop in liquidity, I would probably just expect price to not do as much and to trade on lower amounts of volume, as you can see here. That is kind of what happened here. So if you're like, well, when should I buy in? Let's say that you missed everything, you missed all the boat, but you think that the price is going to increase, which it did. Your signal probably to get in potentially would be, you know, this when the liquidity was just really mounting. And that was like Feb 19, Feb 20, Feb 21. Liquidity is being increased, potentially demand's being increased, and that's around here-ish. And had you done something like that, you would have been quite pleased because a few days later, a few days later, you know, the price goes up 150%. There are a lot of examples of things like this on Uniswap, but what I really do have to recommend is to investigate other factors, because it's not like, I mean, I know I've been saying this throughout the whole video, but it's not like everything is tied to Uniswap's pool. There are other pools as well that you can look at besides Ethereum to, you know, that token. And if you want to see that, I think you can get it by clicking this. I understand. Okay, yada, yada. And it might take a long time to load this because it's loading all liquidity of FTM. But this is something you can use if you want to look at, like, let's say, the total pool or all the pools. And it's going to say all the pools right here, the pairs. But I hope my PC doesn't like explode or die. Yeah. I'll use that for a water break. Oh, okay. Here we go. We have something. Come on, Uniswap. Well, total liquidity's increased 0.77%. That's really not a lot. Volume's doubled. That's good. However, I will say, you can look at the volume tab here. I will say, though, that I care more about Uniswap liquidity than I do care about Uniswap volume. It's just a better indicator for me to look at liquidity than volume, and that's just something that I hold to be true. But yeah, you see pretty similar patterns here as to what we just looked at with FTM to Ethereum. You see pretty similar liquidity patterns here, and the reason for that is because that's just the dominant pool. There aren't too many other pools that are that big. I mean, like 12.5K on a coin like this doesn't really matter at all. So yeah, this is really just going to be showing the same exact thing I had shown about 3 to 4 minutes ago. But yeah, that's going to be it for this video. Please do your own research. This is highly speculative, and these kinds of investments can lead to you losing near everything or potentially everything you put in. So this is not something you want to put 50% of all your portfolio in. That's a pretty bad idea. What I would look out for is look for theoretical reasons to why the price of something could rise without using confirmation bias. So one way you can do that is if you think that this is a dominant strategy, that a bunch of availability for a coin to be traded, i.e. liquidity, is going to increase the price of that native token, then you can spot out for opportunities of large percent increases in liquidity. If liquidity triples, and let's say that the coin is just slowly rising, that to me is typically a pretty good sign that the coin continues to rise. At least that's what I've noticed in my research. Typically the best opportunities did come when it was like liquidity doubling, liquidity tripling on a pool, especially Ethereum or WETH pools. And then the price is like increasing like 5 or 10% in one day. Typically, more often than not, the price continued to increase. But don't forget the other factors like price of Bitcoin, price of Ethereum. Of course, those have a pretty large sway on the price of these coins. And then also look at use cases of the coin, because some of these coins can be quite different than other coins, kind of like something like Ampleforth. Like AMPL is very, very different. So you got to watch out for things like that. Happy trading. I'm going to link everything that I think will be of value to you guys in the description below. So just click the show more button if you want to get all these things that I'm showing you. Everything here is free. Nothing here will cost you any money. And I wish you guys the best of luck in trading on Uniswap. Bye-bye.